The Atlanta Falcons traded for cornerback Jeff Okudah from the Detroit Lions. How does this impact their 2023 NFL Draft with the 8th overall pick? We'll discuss it next on the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL. I'm a national scout over with the Draft Network and your favorite and local running back guru. And as always, I got Mr. LSU, the champion, with me as always. My boy, Keith Sanchez. You can find him on Twitter at TheTalentCode. Keith, talk to him, baby.
Yes. What's going on, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst at the Draft Network. Man, and like DP says, what? 2019 national champ. Yes, but you know why we're here? We're here to bring championship level content when it comes to the NFL draft, whether that's prospects, whether that's philosophies, whether that's analysis. But DP, man, we have a hell of a slate today, man. We go through Ryan Fowler's tight end big board, which I've seen a couple names, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to lean into my guy just a little bit, man. We're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons, man, because they had a really big trade coming up. And then we're also going to have we introduced it last week, and we're going to bring it back again this week. And this is the Coach 'em Up segment where we give you the talent, right, as the general managers. Now it's on the head coach, the position coaches, just to coach these guys up. But before we get started with this Atlanta Falcons breakdown of the trade, DP, man, why don't you kick it off with one of our sponsors?
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Keith, the Atlanta Falcons needed cornerback help, and they went to Detroit to find it, Keith. They made a move and went and traded for, I think they traded a 2023 fifth-round pick for former top 5 pick Jeff Okudah, right, Keith, that they will put opposite of A.J. Terrell. So now that kind of moves cornerback down the priority list at the 8th pick, Keith.
The priority list, DP, and we have something we have to talk about. You were against Bijan Robinson at first at this pick, but the Atlanta Falcons are making some moves. So are you feeling Bijan Robinson to the Falcons just a little bit more now? Let's see. I got to hear what you have to say.
To Bijan or not to Bijan, as they say in Shakespeare. But I'm getting closer and closer to that point, Keith, when I'm like, you know what? If they made the move, I wouldn't hate it, Keith. But because at the end of the day, yes, you do have Tyler Algier, and I feel like, well, you could add another running back later on. But at the same time, you're positioning yourself to take best player available, and he would be the best player available, truthfully. Right? Now it all depends on where you want to head as a team, but I wouldn't hate the pick if they made it at this point.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Terry Fontenot, especially in the first round, the past couple of drafts, he's almost been the best player available type guy, right? Good
point.
The tight end position with Kyle Pitts, was that necessarily like you don't rank tight end as the top 3 premier positions, right? It's usually offensive tackle, edge, corner, quarterback, right? And he didn't go there.
That was also the Justin Fields draft, right? That was the draft where they passed on Fields for Pitts. Okay.
Yeah, that was also that draft. And then you look at it last year, right? They went Drake London, and listen, that's debatable whether Drake London was the best wide receiver. I think now, maybe not. We'll see when Desmond Ridder is able to get him the football. But that was still almost a best player available type selection for the Atlanta Falcons. So I can very well see him saying, hey, who is just the best player on the board? And let's just go get that, because you talked about it, right? Like they're off-season acquisitions, man. And it's not just Jeffrey Okudah, right? It's signing Jesse Bates at safety. And then now you're pairing him with an A.J. Terrell on the other side. So, we're talking about the no-fly zone, right? Like, is the Atlanta Falcons the new no-fly zone coming up, man? And then so they addressed what other position? They addressed the edge rusher position. They brought in Calais Campbell. So it's a lot of free agent movements that they're doing. And we talked about this all the time, DP, right? Like a use free agency to address holes to where you're getting proven commodities and you know exactly what you're getting. So then that way in the draft, you don't have to reach you can simply draft best player available.
No, 100%, Keith. Like you said, David Onyemata on the defensive line as well. You know what I mean? And they improved that. Because, you know me, for the Draft Network, all 2022, the Falcons were a team that were in my bucket for NFL teams to do pro scouting on. And what did I always come in our meetings and say when I had the Falcons that week? Get Grady Jarrett some help. Grady Jarrett some help, man. And they did that, Keith. Now, so then you look at Bijan, but Keith, you look at Myles Murphy. Right, the explosive edge rusher, right, the guy that looks good, that has the physical tools, arm length, the body type, everything from Clemson. A guy that now we've seen that how explosive he is with that 4'5", 140 at 270 plus pounds. Like he could be in play at number 8. But Keith, I want to throw a scenario at you. Go ahead.
No, I have a question about Myles Murphy in this Atlanta Falcons scheme because I know you've heavily scouted this team. Is this more of a 3-4 base, 4-3 base type football team? And I know that most teams play nickel, right? But what do you foresee like Myles Murphy fitting in, kind of in this scheme? Because we know that he's more of a hand in the ground guy. So how do you feel about him coming to Atlanta Falcons? Is there a position for him?
Last year, I think there was Dean Pease was the DC, and I think he's retired now. So he was running more of that 3-4 base defense. I believe they have Coach Nielsen from the Saints, who, if I remember correctly, what you would know more than I do, the Saints ran more 4-down lineman type of settings, if I remember correctly. So I think if they run to what Nielsen likes to do, what he's accustomed to doing from New Orleans, and run more of a 4-man front, I could see a situation where it's Onyemata inside beside Grady Jarrett, and then you have Calais Campbell as like a strong side end, and then bring Myles Murphy as the other defensive end in that 4-man front, especially on early downs. And you can kind of get creative because you still got D'Angelo Malone and Arnold Epiketti as your 2 edge rushers when you want to bring some speed onto the field on third downs. But I think he could fit if they're going to run that scheme. Now, if they are going to go back to that 34 base, then it makes it a little different because I don't believe he's a true stand-up edge through and through, like 2-point stance, no hand in the dirt. He's just upright. I don't know if that's probably the best thing for him. I do like him, in spurts like that, but full time, maybe not. You know what I mean? So that maybe if they stick to that 3-4, they may stick with the edge rushers they got. But I do have an interesting scenario for you. We talk about offense, right? So if they don't go edge and they don't go Bijan, but they still want to go offense, I think a receiver could be in play here, Keith. If you believe in Desmond Ridder, you know my slogan, Keith. I'm going to make you go every blade of grass on the field, and I'm going to give my quarterback as much weapons as possible. So if Bijan isn't the direction you go, what about Jaxon Smith-Njigba to throw into this receiver core with a Drake London, with the Kyle Pitts, Scotty Miller from the Tampa Bay Bucks, and then Mac Hollins that they got from the Raiders? Now you have yourself, to me, a big 3 as pass catchers with Drake, Pitts, and JSN.
Yeah, and I like it. I will ask you this question. Because the talent that Jaxon Smith-Njigba is, we know he's a supreme talent, right? Like we like him as a football player. This is a guy that as long as the quarterback can get him the football, he's a guy that's going to make plays for you. And I believe in that. Now, my question would be this, right? Kyle Pitts is not a traditional tight end, right? At the end of the day, he's going to be a guy that's, kind of going to be more flexed out. So are you envisioning him and Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Kyle Pitts kind of splitting those kind of slot or wide receiver number 3 reps? Like how do you envision that pairing going? Because obviously somebody's probably going to have to play outside. So I want to ask you, how do you envision that pairing with those 2 guys complement each other?
Man, I think they complement each other well, Keith, because watching this offense last year, you would see, and I would give, like you said, Kyle Pitts isn't a traditional tight end, but I would give the man some credit. He did improve as a blocker, so they would leave him in line at times, but they flex him out in the slot. They'll flex him out wide, right? Like a big X receiver or a big Z as well. So I think they mesh together very well. You can be flexible and fluid in terms of where, you know that Kyle Pitts is if anybody on this offense is the coverage dictator, it's Kyle Pitts. So when Kyle Pitts motions around, Keith, that's when you start to see where the defense is going with them and how they're trying to defend them. So you put him out wide, you get to see if they're going to pull a safety down, or a corner is going to be the guy that covers him. Now that gives JSN those safety and linebacker slot reps, you know what I mean, or a worse nickel corner to be able to feast against and get those advantageous matchups. So yeah, I think they mesh well, Keith. I think they do.
Yeah, I think that this frees up, man, because how many times, and I know I've done it already, right? I mocked the corner to the Atlanta Falcons, right? And probably Christian Gonzalez, maybe Devin Witherspoon. But I think this just frees up the Atlanta Falcons for them to be able to transition to, like you said, take best player available or address a different positional need. Now, can they, could they possibly go offensive tackle? Because in the free agent period, they went heavy defense, man. They went a lot of veterans on the defensive side of the football. And then we know last year they went heavy defense, right? They drafted the linebacker out of I can't remember. He was from up north.
I'm Troy Anderson. I forget the school, but I know
Troy
you're talking
Anderson,
about.
Yeah, Troy Anderson. Was it Montana or Montana State? I can't remember.
Somewhere up there.
They drafted Arnold Ebiketie, right, the edge rusher. So they went defense these past 2 years, and I think that they're finally trying to put that thing together. Now it's time to get that offense going, right? And I think it's really you take the next step forward with Desmond Ridder, and you hope that you surround him with enough pieces, and then you make a decision on Desmond Ridder. And if you have to go get a free agent quarterback after this year, or, Desmond Ridder could be your guy, or you can be in position to draft another quarterback. But all of those are options by the way that they're able to move. Not going to lie, I was a little nervous about Terry Fontenot, not as him as a person, because I've heard him speak. He came to LSU, one of the brightest minds in college, in NFL, right? One of the brightest young minds in the NFL. But, the beginning of this, I was a little nervous, man. I'm like, okay, what we doing, Terry? What we doing? But he has figured things out, and it appears that the Atlanta Falcons are on the upswing, making these aggressive moves. But DP, listen, man, we talk about the upswing. We have to get up into Ryan Fowler's, man, tight end big boy. Yes, he dropped his top 10 tight ends. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I have a couple of disagreements. There are a couple of guys for me that are too low, some guys that are too high. So coming up next, man, myself, Damian Parsons, we're going to get into this tight end big board, man.
Family, looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever, and that's Built Bar. You got to try this, I promise you. If you're like me, you want to make a healthier snack choices and you don't want to compromise on taste, then I got the thing for you, Built Bar and Built Puffs. Built Bar are healthy and taste amazing, and the reason why they taste amazing, they're made out of 100% real chocolate. I've tried it. I love them. I continue to restock my desk here in my office with them. So I promise you guys, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, churro. If you like a variety of flavors, you're going to love Built Bar. So you can go to your local Walmart, go to the pharmacy section, grab a 4-bar box. You can go to your local Sam's Club, get a 13-bar box, or you can let us help you out and take a little bit off. And just go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON15. You'll get 15% off your next order. Ryan Fowler, your top 10 tight end big board. We're about to pick it apart, brother. Let's get into it, Keith. I'm going to go ahead and list them off real quick. At number 1, we got Utah's Dalton Kincaid. Number 2, Darnell Washington from Georgia. Number 3, Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. Number 4, Luke Musgrave, Oregon State. Number 5, Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Number 6, Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State. Number 7, Brenton Strange, Penn State. Number 8, Zach Kuntz, Old Dominion. Number 9, Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. And number 10, Daniel Barker out of Michigan State. Keith, what kind of smoke you got for Ryan?
Yeah, now we have to start at number 4, man. Luke Musgrave at number 4. And listen, I know the guy is injured, man. I know he has been injured. And when somebody's injured, you know what you do? You watch the film from the year before, right? Like that's what you do, and you grade them off of that film, man. So I watched the film from the guy the year before, and when we talk about the upside, right? Because we're talking about upside as pass catchers. I think he has the biggest upside in this entire draft, man. We were at the Senior Bowl, DP. We seen him. We said that looks like an NFL tight end. Every bit of the way, right? We seen him walking around the hotel. We seen him at practice. When this guy opens up his stride, it's really something special. And watching the film from the 2021, you seen a guy that can push vertical down the field to where I just think, man, out of these tight ends, I think he definitely belongs in top 2 to top 3, right? But I'm not sure about putting Michael Mayer in front of him, and I understand the productivity, but I really do like the upside of Luke Musgrave.
No, that's a good point, Keith. I'm gonna get 2 points off here. Darnell Washington at 2 gotta come down for me, man. I love Big Wash. I love Big Darnell, but I don't see the athlete that we saw on tape that we saw in Indy at the Combine, Keith. I don't see a guy that tested, that moves as fast or as explosive as he tested, right? So like that to me is just, I know he's a great blocker, but I feel like from a passing standpoint, as a weapon in the passing game, it may be a little limited in terms of route tree, how you're going to use him, and where you're going to deploy him in the passing game.
I want to ask you, man. Like, I know you dropped the comp and you said this is not what I'm saying he is, and you talked about Gronkowski, right? But is there a tier 2 or tier 3 comp for him, right? Like, if you had to say, like, okay, I'm not talking about a Hall of Fame guy, I'm talking about an average starter. Like, is there a comp that comes to mind for you with him?
Mercedes Lewis, who's probably in year 20 at this point because he's still playing in the NFL, right? Like, I don't know what this man got going on, but he's got the fountain of youth because he's still playing, right? I think Mercedes Lewis, big, physical, good athlete in his prime, and a guy that is a tremendous blocker. Has been his entire career. And then when you look at run-heavy teams, with the Green Bay Packers, like they want to run the ball with those 2 running backs, and Mercedes Lewis does a good job of helping set those hard edges and collapsing the defensive line to give them the perimeter.
DP. I like that comp, man. I like that comp a lot, man. I really like that comp. As a matter of fact, I'm still in that comp, just to let you know, man.
I appreciate the heads up.
Man, I really like that comp, man. I think that's a really good comp for him, man. I think Mercedes Lewis is a really good comp. But DP, listen, continue to break down this top 5. Listen, it was Sam Laporta at number 5, which we've talked about
that
on the show.
I don't agree with. Sam, no. Sam is up, man. I put Sam up. Sam is top 4, possibly top. I'm gonna say this may come as a hot take to y'all family. I honestly would draft Sam Laporta before I draft Michael Mayer.
That's what they call a hot take, DP. That's a hot take right there, baby. But like you said, man, stand on it. So let's go to number 6. Number 6 was Tucker Kraft, which another guy, which he was injured, right? But it is what it is. And then number 7 is Britton Strange, and then number 8 is Zach Kuntz. I'm gonna have to be completely honest with you, DP. I like Luke Schoonmaker and Daniel Barker, both his number 9 and his number 10, more than I like his number 7 and number 8. Britton Strange, I think he's a solid football player. I foresee him making the NFL roster, but I think there is a cap to it. And then Zach Kuntz, he scares me a little bit, DP. He scares me, man. He scares me because I look at his frame, and it's not dense, right? So you're talking about a guy with blocking, and then I wonder if he's one of those guys where he's straight line fast, but his lower half is just so long that when it comes down to changing direction, he just can't change direction that quickly, right? And and for defensive backs, most times that's an easy cover, right? Like I just got to run straight with you. So that's the part that kind of worried me a little bit with Zach Kuntz, and that's just those 2. I would definitely swap 9 and 10 because I do like Daniel Barker from Michigan State. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. You want to drop another retro name for tight ends? He reminds me of Delaney Walker, man. He reminds me of Delaney Walker. They use him in a lot of different ways. He's a guy that has taken handoffs at Michigan State. He lines up in the Y. He lines up in the F. He lines up in line. He lines up at wide receiver and beats wide receivers. It beats cornerbacks. So this is a guy that does a lot of different things. And once again, it's a Big Ten tight end in a Big Ten offense with no quarterback. So that kind of explains itself.
I haven't watched him yet, but Keith, I'm intrigued now. You dropped Delaney Walker. That's one of my guys in this prime, baby. So I got to get my eyes on it. But I do agree. I feel like 9 and 10 should be at 7 and 8, and 7 and 8 should be at 9 and 10. I 100% agree with that because Zach Kuntz, while I mentioned him as a coach, one of my coach him up guys in the past couple of weeks, like you said, everything that you stated was true. You know what I mean? The transitions in terms of breaking out of routes and things like that isn't is fluid for a big 6'7", 6'8" guy. So I'm 100% agree with you, man. Hey, this is a good list by Fowler, but Fowler, we had to break it down and tell you what we didn't like about it. You know how we do over at the Draft Network. We keep 100 with you, baby. So like I said, it's a good list, but definitely some movements, Keith. Definitely some folks you can move.
Right, nah, definitely, man. And speaking about moving, man, let's move on to the coach 'em up segment, man, where we, like I said, we just tell the coaches, we drafted this guy, he has enough talent, coach him up and get the best out of him. So these are based off prospects that may be ranked, outside of the top 100, but we've identified that they have some ability and that the coaches just need to take them and go coach them up. So that segment is coming up next.
Coach them up, Keith. Let's hand these general managers and these head coaches prime candidates that can make plays and be impact players. Keith, I want to kick it off with the guy that you discussed yesterday in your stock down segment, Nolan Smith, Keith. When we talk about coach him up, I think he's the perfect candidate for that, right?
He needs to be coached.
Keith, he's the perfect candidate of getting him technically refined and getting those hands and the pass rush repertoire up to a higher standard, a higher level rather, because Keith, he has everything else. He has explosiveness. He can bend off the edge. He's powerful, long arms. But man, the young man, and again, Georgia, Devonta Wyatt, Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, all those guys from a technical standpoint, extremely raw. Like none of them really knew how to deconstruct and win quick because they weren't asked to. It was, listen, man, just go out there and be you. Be an athlete. Be bigger, stronger, and faster than your opponents. But now you in the big man's league where you're not the only people that are big, strong, and fast. So it's like now it's a learning period, an adjustment period, right? For all three of those guys. It's going to be the same thing for a Nolan Smith, Keith. Like, I love what he brings to the table, but coaches, he has everything. As a scout, I'm going to bring you this ball of clay. He has a character. He has a work ethic, all of it. Now you got to get his mental processing where he's able to really devise a plan for every offensive tackle he faces, work on the outside rush, work on the inside counters, work on having not just two, but even three moves in his bag to throw at guys. He has everything you want, but he's a guy you got to coach him up.
I actually like this spot for Nolan Smith in the coach him up segment, DP. I like this spot for him because I think that obviously we talked about him yesterday with the stock down, but then the other side of that coin is what? The coaching part of it, right? Like that you have all of the tools and athletic ability. Now it's up to, the coaching staff, wherever you get drafted to try to get the best of that ability, right? And it talks about put you in the right situations. I know you've mentioned Haason Reddick with him, and not so much so just a pure comparison from a talent and ability perspective, right, of what you've seen, but more so of, man, look what Haason Reddick was in one situation, then look what he became in another situation, right? And you can talk about Chandler Jones with the New England Patriots versus Chandler Jones with the Arizona Cardinals. So the coach him up segment is really good for him because maybe this guy, because I believe Georgia's another team that runs 4-3, and he's a hand in the ground guy. They run some variation of odd, but he plays with his hand in the ground, and he plays much more heavily to the run game, if you notice that, right? Like even in pass sets, he's checking for runs. So maybe if they put this guy in more traditional pass rushing, getting after the quarterback, maybe some wide nine stuff, and allow him to be an athlete, you get a better version of Nolan Smith and his ability.
Kid, real quick, I want to piggyback off of something you said when you brought even like we talked about Haason Reddick. That landing fit to the Eagles might be a good one because Haason Reddick knows what it's like to be a Nolan Smith, right? Be viewed as a tweener, as man, you're physically strong and you're physically and athletically gifted, but people view you as, man, maybe we just turn him into an off-ball backer and drop him off in coverage and use that athleticism as like, yeah, that's not really the best use of my skill set to just turn me into that. So a guy like Haason Reddick could actually be great for his development because Haason can help speed up that development working with those guys. You think as a coach, if you draft Nolan Smith at 10, Nolan Smith's locker going right beside Haason Reddick, man. Right. Matter of fact, Keith, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm rearranging the whole locker room. Nolan Smith is going between Haason Reddick and Brandon Graham. You're going to learn technique one way or the other, buddy.
I like that. I like that. So you have Damian DP, man. He's up there rearranging locker rooms for the Philadelphia Eagles, baby. But you got to do what you got to do, man, to get the best out of your talent. DP, man, my coach him up guy, 6'4", 260 pounds, ran a 4.63. Had to get that right, man. Make sure I got that right. Talking about Clemson's edge, KJ Henry. I seen enough to where I feel like coach him up, man. And I don't know if we ever get double-digit sacks out of this guy, but there's nothing wrong with asking for 7 to 8 sacks per year because you see the athleticism, and we talked about him compared to like a Zach Harrison type. I like KJ Henry more, man. I think he's a little bit more explosive. He has more bend. He's more fluid. And to be quite honest, he has just made more plays. The only thing that's missing is the sack production from KJ Henry. So if I had to pick a coach him up guy for this week, I'm talking about if you can get KJ Henry back in the third round, you're a 4-3 team, put his hand in the ground. I think I'm handing him to my coach, and I'm saying let's try to get 7 to 8 sacks out of this guy because the ability and athletic ability is definitely there.
Keith, I love that. I just watched him this morning, and I agree with you. I wanted to ask you a question. Is he strictly, because he's what, 6'4", 250, a little over 250, 33, I think even on the arms. Would you play him as a stand-up edge, or would you just keep him as a 4-3 defensive end?
I would keep him as a 4-3 defensive end, and the weight thing, right? We have to take it from our sources. You know what I'm saying? And he weighed in at 250 something at the NFL Combine. I don't believe he's 250 something. Like when I watch him on film, this is a big boy. This is a guy I think he pushes 265 more than he pushes 250, right? So I think that he dropped that weight for the NFL Combine. You know, he had 2 months to drop 15 pounds. Obviously, you know, talking about a high caliber athlete, easily do it. So I don't think he's a stand-up guy. I think he's a hand in the ground guy. I think he's a guy that you get to work, and he should be a guy to be able to convert speed to power, right? Now, if you want to put a little bit more weight on him and get him to 270, he's kind of that heavy defensive end. I wouldn't mind kicking him inside on certain, pass rush situations if you have another edge rusher that may be a little bit lighter. So KJ Henry, man, I like some of the things I've seen. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a all-world player. I just think that if you're talking about getting sack production, I think there is something to be kind of squeezed out of there to be able to get sack production.
Nah, I like it, Keith. Shout out to the Clemson Tigers. They have 4 defensive players out of their front 7 that will be drafted. KJ Henry, Brian Brzee, Miles Murphy, and Trenton Simpson. They know how to recruit down there on the defensive side of the ball. But guys, we appreciate y'all as always for tapping in with us. Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to get the latest episode as soon as it's available. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day, Monday through Friday. We appreciate it, man. Come and tap in with us as always on tomorrow. On Twitter for Keith Sanchez. You can find them at The Talent Code. I'm Damian Parson, DP_NFL. Like I said, thank y'all so much. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.